Hello everyone, welcome to attend our case practice lecture series, and this is our third lecture of this semester. And today we're going to talk about the business situation framework. Before that, we'll have a little review about what we have done in the previous lectures, such as the basic steps for case solving, the framework requirements, the profitability framework from the last lecture. And we'll go into that very soon. So let's get started. So what are the basic steps of case solving? There are only 4 steps actually, which is very simple from the first glance. And so we just started with the summarizing of the case and the clarification of the objectives. And then we will develop a structure, and before which we'll have to make a hypothesis. And we drill down on each topic, and then we synthesize everything, and then summarize the results and recommendations. And it's very often the case that there's no such framework that can solve every case, or you may encounter in a case interview or in a real life case. So we kind of have to figure out something on our own in the real life. And in this case, we have to bear in mind that there are some requirements about the framework. It's mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. You can see that from the graphs in the bottom. So the left one is about the mutually exclusive, so that we can see that the international and female are not exclusive. But Chinese and American are exclusive, but they are not exhaustive, because there are people other than Americans and Chinese, so that we have international and domestic, which is like mutually exclusive and collectively exhausted in this way. And let's take a look at the profitability framework we did in the last lecture. And this is basically a quantitative method of how to solve a case that's mainly about how to increase the profits, how to deal with the margins, stuff like that. But there's one weakness about this framework is that it does not give you any clue about why this is happening. For example, if a company is suffering from an higher unit cost, but you don't know where is that come from, in that case, you can solve this case based on that. So we give you the business situation framework in this lecture, which is CPCC for short. And this is a glance of how this framework should look like. It deals with a lot of business situations, like having a new business, or considering about whether to enter a market or not, whether to have a new product or not, whether to expand the factory or not, or like to do company position assessment situations like that. And we'll have like 4 aspects here that we have to consider, have to drill down in these topics, which is customer, product, company, and competitors. There are other frameworks such as the 4C framework, which you may heard of. It have the cost in the place of the product, which you are not using because we think that is not mutually exclusive and collectively exhausted. Because the cost part is actually in the company part in this framework. So, and now we can have a closer look with this framework in this case, which is the shoe manufacturer case. And we have done in the previous lecture is that it's more about profit in the profitability framework. Now we have it about the increase the sales and whether to introduce new production into the market. Well, we are giving you lectures about the business situation framework. So we just have a little modification today about this case. So let's have it in our real case. So this is the customer part. So how can we like drill down in the topic of customer? So we want to identify who customer is. When we ask this question, it's mainly about how many segments customer consists of, and how big are each one of them, and are they growing or not? And it's better if we could know the percentage of each segment in the total market. And based on that, we will know because segment is more about like geographic information or demographic information, whether their economy status is, so that based on which we will know that different segments could have different needs. And like, for example, if it's like university students like us, they may have higher price sensitivities than the segments like our parents, who has a lot of money in their pocket and have more like finance freedom, things like that. And also the distribution channel preference is different. For us, we may like to go on internet and buy things from there, but like if for people like much older than us, they may prefer go to the doors and buy from them directly. So there's a difference. There's also a difference in the customer concentration power. For example, if the company has a Walmart effect in their customer market, they'll have to focus more on this Walmart while they considering how to promote their products or not. So that's to take a closer look into when we have the case in our action. So, for example, you're gonna ask the interviewer or yourself to like, who's the customer? Like in the case of a shoe manufacturer, for example, if it's Nike, for example, it's quite hypothetical. For example, the 60% of their customer is the people aged from 13 to 16 to 30 maybe, and then there's about 20% of their customer is from the age of 40s, for example, like that, and based on which we'll have like different features of them, so that, for example, they may put more resource of them into the internet promotion based on that, and they would like have different promotion plan for their offline store, for example. And so these are the very detailed questions you may ask during an interview. And then we can jump on into the product part. So these four are the basic aspect of a product. The nature of product is about like what this product is do and why customer needs them, and whether it's a commodity or not. It has a very difference in their price power in the market. If it's a commodity, it means that the company itself doesn't have much power on whether the price should be, how high it can be, or if it's very special, special goods, so that it can add the price and customer will still stay. And there's about the product's life cycle. If it's a novel product, then it's quite promising to keep like the factory in expansion, or if it's in obsolete, maybe it's not a good idea for the shoe manufacturer to keep putting their money into a new factory or things like that. And there's also packaging problems, which might not be a big issue in our shoe manufacturer case here.
It's about company itself. So, like Shijie said, like we want to tap on four of this, but we might not need to know everything in detail for those four. But because you have like only 30 minutes to do the case, you just don't want to use it all for just data gathering, but you want to give them some recommendation and also wrap up the case as well. So for the company, there are at least like 7 topics that you can choose from. But one question that you want to get out of this is, what's the company good at? You want to know like what they are good at, and maybe somewhat like what their weaknesses. So the first aspect I want to look into is the capability, what they can do. So what is the key factor that make this company successful? Because when we see the business situation, we see the opportunity in some segment, the company might not have capability to pursue that opportunity. Therefore, at first we might need to know about their capability. For example, our shoe manufacturer, they might have a capability in technology, they have new innovation all the time, or they're very good at designing new shoes. That's a good thing, a basic thing to know, because we know that they can create new product. Another thing Shijie also mentioned earlier is that each customer has their own preference in their distribution channel, how they want to buy our product. So we need to see whether or not that channel that we have actually match with our customer. If it's not, we need to fix that. But be careful, different segments also have different preference. Also, there are some changing in distribution channel over time as well. Another aspect of our company that really important is cost structure. We've tapped on that last time on profitability framework. But if it's business situation, we just want to have a general idea whether or not our client is a low cost producer or high cost producer. So if during the case interview, you might want to ask like what the client cost structure is relative to the whole market. And if the interview might give you some suggestions like, yeah, maybe the client cost structure is like comparable to other companies. So we know that cost is not our problem right now. And the company also have, according to the case, the company have increasing revenue, so we might doing okay with the profit part as well. And another thing we want to know is about fixed cost and variable cost, because that's going to lead to barrier of entries, whether or not we need to worry about a new entrance into the business. Next thing is about intangibles, such as brand loyalty. This is like an emotional reason why people buy stuff. This become really important in business situation because, for example, if our shoe manufacturer want to introduce the market into the new country, it would be nice to know whether or not people already know our brand or not. Otherwise, you need to build up the brand recognition from scratch. You might want to ask the interviewer whether or not our brand is well known in that new market already, or how is people there perceive our brand. For the investment cost, that is the next topic, but this is not really important in this case because we're gonna look into investment cost only if the case involved in investment decision, and that might lead us to another framework as well, which called cost benefit analysis. So like I said, like she just mentioned earlier, that there is not a strict path for you to deal out the case. You can have some flexibility to switch framework. And the last two topics about company, first is the financial situation, like how much money your client have in order to invest or in order to enter the new market. Because it's important that when you expand your market, expand your production or expand to the new market, that those decisions would not interrupt your ordinary operation or your daily operation. So as we see on the case that the revenue is rising, cost is steady, so it might be a good time for the company to take on the next step and expand into new market. And the last thing that about a company that I want to talk about is the organizational structure, how the work in the company divided. So there are a lot of ways that you can organize your company, but the decision would based on how you serve your market. What is the best way to organize your market to serve your customer? For example, like if this shoe manufacturer have only one market abroad, and it would not be a good idea that they're gonna divide their organization into regional basis. But once they expand into more than one region, that might be the organization of the company might be an obstacle in order to serve the market. So that's a basic thing that you want to know about the company. So all of this just to answer that question, what the company good at. And the other topic that I want to talk about is a competitor, the fourth element. So two questions here. They are the same thing, a lot of elements that you can ask, but two questions, who are they and how are they doing in the market? Those are really important two questions you want to answer. So first thing you might want to ask your interviewer about, I would like to get a sense of how the competitor doing in the new market. For example, who are selling the same type of product in that market, or how the mixture in those markets. The interviewer might give you okay, we have equal number of competitors, they have equal market share. So that sounds like a good idea because there is no one big company taking whole market. So it might be a good idea for you to expand into that market. Another thing is how they behave in the market as well. If you're basically in this aspect, you want to analyze your competitor as in the similar way that you analyze your client. So what are they doing and what are they capable of? There could be like how they target their customer, whether or not their product are different from us, how are their price strategy, what are their distribution channel, and what about their brand loyalty. And once you get the competitor behavior, you're gonna kind of get a sense for the next question, who is the best practice and who are the leader of the market and who are doing what are they doing that you are not doing. So that could lead to the recommendation in the end. So another thing is whether or not this market have barrier of entries. For example, when you expand to new market, you might need to see how to, for example, like one example that I can think of is that if your competitors have a factory in the new market, but you don't have, that could be a big barrier because they have cost advantages that they don't have to transport a product from another country to another. So that could be something that the company might need to consider if they really want to go to that market. Yeah.
So if you were to ask a question about barriers of entry to the interviewer, would you just say, what are the barriers of entry, or would you be more specific?
Well, to be that specific would not be ideal, okay? So you don't want to ask like, what are the barriers of entry? And you might kind of frame it like, is there any obstacle that we need to consider, such as like, is there any regulation in the new market that we want to consider right now? If you have like an insight about that new market, it would be great. For example, if you know that in order to get into China, you need to be 50-50 venture capital, you cannot go solely. That might be a good insight that you have. But if not, I think this thing you might want to ask, like, is there any like, that's are the two main, I think these are the two main barriers that you're gonna have in a case. So you can also ask like whether or not your competitor have a really high, whether or not going into the business have a really high fixed cost. So that would be like some kind of cost barriers. And another thing is supplier concentration too. So who are the supplier out there? And for the shoe case, I would not pay attention much to this topic because shoe is like a footloose. You can buy a raw material in anywhere. So this won't be like really a big issue in this case. And as I said, regulatory and environment, whether or not there are any regulation that you want to consider and how it affects the company. Another thing about competitor is the life cycle. So for shoe company, it should be like at the maturity because there are a lot of competitors, also like low margin. If you go back to the financial case, like the financial aspect of company, because shoe are like at this maturity state, right? So they have low margin, but we have a really good financial health for the company. So it might be a good idea to get into a new market when it might be still okay to get into this market even though it's already mature. And that's all about the competitors that you want to know who are they and how are they doing. So that's basically the 4 topics that you can use. Like I said, you want to tap on all 4 to see where is the case is going, but you don't need to extract like a lot of information. You need to give time for you to wrap up the case and also give some recommendations. What I would do in the summary for this, you could start your summary sentence by initial analysis. So that based on the information that you have. So it could be, if you have more time, you could do better than this, like that. So that's basically for the lecture for today. And the next time we're gonna go to the drill down, the procedure and issue T. Basically what Zhiping gonna give in this, the lecture for the next time. And it's basically about how you switch from one framework to another, and how to see how flexible these frameworks are. And if you miss any of our lecture, you can go to our YouTube channel to review the old lecture. And today we have 2 cases up here about, it's more about business situation, and enjoy the case practice.